Okay, Be'ez Hashem, today's daf is Daf Yud Gimel, and we are starting from Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. Okay, and it's very apropos. It's funny that we're learning this Gemara. Everything is a Daf Yomi coincidence. It's just the subject of our Gemara. A man says, Hareini Nazir, Li Ben. It means that if, as the Tosfos explains, he makes a shavach to the Eibishter, perhaps he wasn't zeicher for a son, and therefore he, as a token of appreciation to God, he says, I want to be a Nazir when I will have a son. So we have to determine what the word ben means. What does ben mean? Ben means a son. The noiloi ben, and he has a son, hareze Nazir. He becomes a Nazir. However, noilid loy bas, if he had a daughter, if a person had a daughter, hi, hold on. Okay, hold on. Okay, hi. We just began. Okay, where it's Daf Yud Gimel, and we're starting from Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. So a man says, Hareini Nazir. A person says, I'm going to become a Nazir l'kishiyeh li ben, when I will have a son. He was waiting for this child, so he promised that he's going to be a Nazir when I get a son. So a son means a son, a boy. V'noiled loy ben, and he had a son. So he had a son. So God blessed him with a son. Hareze Nazir, he becomes a Nazir. But he meant he's only becoming a Nazir if he has a son. Noiled loy bas, if he had a daughter. Tumtum, we know what a tumtum is. We had this. He's a type of child with a membrane covering its gender, so you don't know if it's a male or female. Or androgynous, an androgynous, which is somebody that has both. He has indications that they are male, and they have indications that they're female. So if he had a child like that, Eino Nazir, he's not a Nazir because he said, I want to become a Nazir only if I have a son. Now, Im Omar, but if he said, I'm becoming a Nazir, Kishayir li Volad, when I'll have a baby. Volad is like a baby. So baby means anything. Even if he got a daughter, Tumtum androgynous or Tumtum and androgynous, any type of baby, Hareze Nazir, he becomes a Nazir. Pretty straightforward Mishnah. Now we go Daf Yigimel Amud Aleph. What happens? He said he made a neder, a Naziris. He said, I'm Nazir when my wife has a child. So what happens? He pila ishtoi. His wife gave birth and it was a stillborn. All right, now the kid lived. Let's say the kid lived. It doesn't mean that he was born a stillborn. What it means is that the child was born, but then let's say after 5 days the child died. Ain't a Nazir, he's not a Nazir. Now, why is he not a Nazir? The wife had a baby boy, let's say, and the child died because he means I want to have a son that's going to live at least the 30 days. And therefore, that's when he conditioned himself to be a Nazir. Now, when a child dies lower than 30 days, we don't really know if this child had the ability to live beyond 30 days, but died from other causes. And therefore, really, his neder took effect because it's a healthy child. It died because of another cause that you're not aware of. And therefore, that's called a child that's called a ben kayama. If that's the case, then really you have to keep your naziris. But there's a possibility that this child that died after day 5 was not a child that was going to live anyway. So really, you don't know if the condition was met on your commitment of having a child. So therefore, technically, you should be what? A suffix nazir. You should be a suffix nazir, a nazir, but not really a nazir because you don't know if it was a child, if the condition was met or not. But we say definitively you're not a Nazir because according to the Tanakam of a Mishnah, we're going to learn this in the Gemara, that the Tanakam of the Mishnah holds that Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that when a person makes a commitment, he's only making a commitment that the result of that commitment would be that he would be a Vadai Nazir, not if the result of that commitment would lead him to become a suffix Nazir, a quasi, we don't know if you're a Nazir. Because it's worse to become a quasi-Nazir. You see, if I tell you you are for sure a Nazir, so 30 days later you take the haircut, you bring your karbonis, it's over. If I tell you you have to keep a suffix Naziris, that you're a doubtful Nazir, then you'll never end it, because you can't bring your karbonis to the base of Migdash, because maybe you're not a Nazir. So therefore, you'll always have to be a Nazir for the rest of your life, and you can never get out of it. So therefore, if this would have led to a situation where you're a doubtful Nazir, you would have never made that commitment in the first place. And therefore, the Tanakama holds that hipila ishtoi, again, if his wife, it doesn't mean his wife miscarried. If that child died before day number 30, so you don't know if it was a child that would have lived beyond day number 30. So it would have led you to become, the result would have been that you would have been a suffix Nazir. So Tanakama holds ain't a Nazir. You're not a Nazir. Rab Shimon says, you really are a suffix Nazir, because I don't know, maybe this is the son that was born and that the son would have lived longer under normal circumstances, but something came up, or this baby would have certainly died. It wasn't the Ben Kayama. But he gives you advice. He says, I have a way out, so you're not a suffix Nazir. Yoimar, you should say, Im hoya Ben Kayama, if this kid that died would have lived beyond 30 days, so then I don't need anything. Then for sure, Harei ani Nazir Chayva. Then I'm supposed to keep obligated to be a Nazir. The im lav, but if this child was going to die before, it was a very weak child and wasn't destined to live beyond day 30. So you now say to yourself, well, I don't want to be a suffix Nazir for the rest of my life. You're going to say, I'm making myself a new Nazir right at this moment. Harei ani Nazir Nadava. I'm going to become now a Nazir on my own volition. And therefore, no matter what, after day 30, you can just take the haircut and walk away from the whole thing, because either you're obligated because the condition was met on your original commitment, or you're making a brand new commitment, and therefore you have to keep 30 days, and then the 30 days are over, and then you can get out of your Naziris. Next case, Chazra of Yolda. Again, according to the Tanakama, after the child died, right? If the child died, you don't have to be a Nazir. What happened a year later? Your wife had another child. The wife had another child. So according to the Tanakama, since you made a commitment that you want to be a Nazir when your wife has a baby boy, so therefore Harei a Nazir, you become a Nazir. But Rab Shimon says, according to Rab Shimon, even after the first child that died after 5 days, you have to be a Nazir. So again, you run into a problem. Maybe you didn't really have to be a Nazir at that time, and you have to be a Nazir now, because now the condition for your original commitment has been met. You have now a healthy baby boy. So Yoimar, you should say, according to Reb Shimon, you're going to keep 2 Naziris. Yoimar, you're going to say, Im Harishon ben Kayoma, if the kid that was born, the first kid that was born, ben Kayoma, would have lived beyond 30 days. So my original commitment would have taken effect, and I have to keep a Naziris for my original commitment. So Harisha and Chayva, then the first time I'm going to keep Naziris, it was obligated to do so. And Vizu, this time around, by the second baby, I make a new commitment that I'm going to keep a 30-day Naziris on my own volition. Nadava, it's on my own. So you're going to have 2 Nazirises, each for 30 days for each of these children. Be'im lav, but let's say the first child turns out was not a Ben Kayama, and therefore your first commitment didn't kick in. So therefore, but Rab Shimon said when the first child is born, you should take a new commitment because you don't know if you're going to have a second child. So you'll say Harisha Nidava. The first time, the first round of Naziris will be a donation. Vizu, but after the second child is born, I'm obligated because of my original commitment that said that as soon as I have a baby, then I am obligated to keep Naziris. So the Gemara discusses each part of the Mishnah. We spoke out the Gemara on the Mishnah, so it makes sense, and now everything goes easy. The Gemara says, the Mishnah says, okay, what's the first case? A guy says, I'm going to be a Nazir when I have a son. So for Gemara, and so the Mishnah says, if you have a boy, you're a Nazir. Hi, Ma'ila Memra, says the Gemara says, what's the novelty of that? You said I'm going to be a Nazir if I have a son. Well, you had a son. And says the Gemara, Mishum Sefer, because of the end of the Brisa. The Brisa said, the end of the Mishnah, if it's Bas, Tumtim, Androgenis, ain't a Nazir. You're not a Nazir. Because you're not a Nazir, because you said I'm going to have a son. And Tumtum and is a membrane over the gender, or it has the indication of both male and female. You're not a Nazir because you said I'm a Nazir only if I have a definitive baby boy. So the Gemara says, is that a novelty? Pshita, of course. You're saying that I'm only a Nazir if I have a definitive baby boy. So what is the novelty of the Mishnah? So the Gemara says, I would say that the word ben doesn't mean son. It means the she'abana hu the kamar. When I have somebody that could build future generations, it doesn't matter if it's a boy, girl, or a tumtin androgenis. So I might think that your condition has been met even if a daughter was born, because when you said the word ben, you didn't mean boy, you meant somebody that can build my future, and it can be a girl. Hamash malam. So the chiddush is the light. That's not how we interpret what you said, because usually when it comes to Nedarim, we have to give credence to the vocabulary that people generally use. And generally, when people talk, when they say the word ben, they mean a boy, and therefore we're not going to interpret it any other way. And so therefore, only if you have a boy, that's when you have to keep your Naziris. But, says the Mishnah, when I'm going to have a baby, I want to be a Nazir, then no matter what's born, you have to become a Nazir. So the Gemara says, Pshita, that's obvious too. You said, only if I have a baby, I'm a Nazir. So if you had any type of child, that should obligate you to become a Nazir. So what's the novelty of the Mishnah? So the Gemara says, Mahu, the same, I would have thought, blood the michasha beina nasha be'inan, that when you meant a baby, you meant the baby that people will give you recognition for, and that's only by a boy. In that society, even in the Mishnaic society, the boy was given more chashivas than the girl, and therefore, I might think that when you said volad, you meant a special baby, not just any baby. Kamash Milan, no. You said the word baby, and baby means whether it's a boy, girl, tumtim androgenis, all of that is included in your neder. Now the Mishnah said, Hapila ishti, but if your wife, you said you're going to be a Nazir if you have a child. Then what happened? Your wife gave birth, and the child died, let's say 5 days later. Then the Mishnah says, Ain't a Nazir. You're not a Nazir. Man katani law. Who's the author of the Tan of the Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda de Krihu. Rabbi Yehuda of this Mishnah of Kri, and as I explained, Rabbi Yehuda holds, if you say a condition, and that condition leads to a situation where you can become a Suffolk Nazir, so then that's not what you meant. And therefore, you're not going to become ever a Suffolk Nazir. When a person takes on a commitment dependent on a condition, he only wants that to be, if the condition is met, then he wants to become a for sure Nazir. Here, in this situation, if your wife gives birth to a child, which you don't know is a child that would have lived or not, you're not going to commit yourself to take on a Suffolk Naziris, because to become a Suffolk Nazir is much worse than to becoming a Vadai Nazir. A for sure Nazir has an end date. It's after 30 days, you get rid of the whole thing. But if I tell you you're becoming a Suffolk Nazir because you don't know if your wife gave birth to a normal child or not, then you'll never end in Naziris. In such a situation, we understand you never want to take on that commitment, and therefore you're not a Nazir. So that's the author is Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara, but Reb Shimon says, even if you would become a Suffolk Nazir, a person takes on a commitment that's dependent on a condition, even if it leads to him becoming a Suffolk Nazir, because there's always a way out. There's almost always. It's not always a way out, but Rabbi Shimon says in this case, you have a way out of becoming a Suffolk Nazir. Yoimar, you say, Im hoya ben kayama, if the boy, I don't know, he died after day 5, but he would have lived beyond 30 days. So then, of course, then I'm obligated to be a Nazir. because the condition has been met. And therefore, for sure, going to be these 30 days a Nazir. The imla, but if this child would not have lived for 30 days, then according to my commitment, I shouldn't be a Nazir, but I don't know. So since I'm in a doubt, I'm going to take upon myself an obligation to become a Nazir now. Hareini Nazir Daf, I'm donating, I'm making myself a voluntary Nazir. And therefore, no matter what, after day 30, you can get rid of the whole Naziris, taking a haircut and bringing the carbonates. Now, the Gemara asks a question. A question. Rab Abba asked a question from Rav Huna. A man says, "Hareini nazir likishiyeli ben." A man says, "I want to be a nazir when I have a boy." Okay. V'hipila ishtoi. Fascinating case. Again, similar to our Mishnah. The boy was born. 5 days later, it died. So the hifrish carbon, and then he separated a carbon. He said that these animals are going to be the animals I'm going to bring as a carbon when I finish my Naziris. Now, the chazra of the Yolda, and then his wife gave birth to the twin. In other words, the wife gave birth an hour after the birth. Okay, let's do it this way. An hour after the birth, the child died. He separated a carbon, says, I'm going to become a Nazir, and this is going to be my carbon. And then his wife gave birth to the twin of the child that died. Now, what the Gemara is going to explain what this question is all about in a moment. Mahu, what would be the din in that case? What's the din with those animals? So the Gemara says the Gemara doesn't even understand what the question is. So, Aliba Deman, who are you asking this question? Aliba de Rab Shimon, if you're going according to Rab Shimon, my tibayale, what is your question? According to Rab Shimon, when the first child died, you already had to be a Nazir. Even if there was not twin here, even if there was no twin, if there was just one child and that child died right an hour after it was born, you still have to become a Nazir. Rab Shimon says, Safek Naziris lahachmir. If you're not sure if you should be a Nazir or not, you should go strict and become a Nazir. So certainly you could separate a carbon to say that these animals should have Kedusha and they should be brought when I finish my Naziris. So according to Reb Shimon, these animals are holy animals, and therefore, because you're obligated to become a Nazir. Be'ela alibad Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's the question. Since what happened over here was, the guy said, I'll be a Nazir when I have a son. Okay? At the end, he did have a son. The twin was born. But if you take it literally, only when the twin was born, you're obligated to become a Nazir. Prior to the twin being born, you're not obligated to be a Nazir. But he separated a carbon prior to the twin being born. So he separated the carbon before he's obligated to be a Nazir. So that carbon should not be Kedushadik. But here's the kicker over here. But since there was a twin born, it turns out that twin indicates to us that the previous child that died was really a healthy child, because the second kid, the twin, looks healthy. So it must be that the first child that was born was also healthy. And therefore, right when the first child was born and died an hour later, he died from other causes. But really, this child that would have technically lived beyond 30 days. So therefore, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, you should have been obligated to be a Nazir right when the first child was born. And therefore, by separating the carbon before the second child was born, that carbon has Kedusha to it. So the Gemara says, my Kodesh, Oiloi Kodesh, is it a holy animal or not a holy animal? You're mafresh the carbon of a Nazir before the second child was born. So maybe that carbon is not holy anymore, because you didn't take on the Naziris only after the second child was born, because that's when you actually had a boy that's going to live for 30 days. But the fact that the second child was born should tell us a story about the first child that died, that first child that died should have lived longer and somehow was mistreated in the hospital. That's why it died. And therefore, by you separating carbon before the second child was born, you made a holy carbon. So my nafkamina, if the animal is holy, the Gemara says it certainly makes a nafkamina. Ligizosoi v'lavid boy. Can you share the animal? Can I work with the animal? It's a holy animal or not? Teku, the Gemara remains unresolved with this question. A new question. Boy Meine Ben Ruchumi Mabaya. It's an odd name. Ben Ruchumi from Abaya. This is the only time in Shas you have this name called Ben Ruchumei, and his question has to do with friendship. The word Ruchumei means you love a friend. So Ben Ruchumei asked a question from Abaya. Very interesting question. Two guys, Reuven and Shimon. One said, Hareini Nozik Sh'yeli Ben. Reuven said, I'm dying to have a son. I'm going to become a Nazir if I have a son. V'shama Chaver, and his friend said, V'amar, and he said, V'alai, on me too. What did he mean, on me too? Maho, what did he mean to say, the second guy? Adibure mashma. Did he mean to say, yes, when you have a son, I'm also going to become a Nazir, because I'm your friend? Oi, did he mean agufei mashma? He meant to say, no, not when you have a son, I'll be a Nazir. It's when I will have a son, I'll be a Nazir. I'm taking on the same commitment that you're making with your wife. I'm taking on with my wife. When my wife has a son, I'll become a Nazir too. So what did this man mean when he said va'alai? Now, if you want to say that he meant to say that I'm going to be a Nazir when I have a child, that's what va'alai means. Okay, but what about this case? Hareini Nazir Sh'yeli Ben. Guy, the Reuven said, I'm going to be a Nazir when I have a child. Fine. V'shama Chaverai, and he said, the friend heard, V'ama, instead of saying V'olai, on me, he said V'ani, and I. So maybe and I is a little different than on me. And we'll say like this, Maho, what did he mean to say? What did Shimon mean to say after hearing his friend Reuven say, I'm a Nazir when I have a son? And his friend said, and I. What did he mean, and I? Anafshei Kamar. Did he mean to say, I'm also going to be a Nazir when my wife has a Nazir? Maybe this is what he meant to say. And that's why Ben Ruchume is the one that asking this question. Because maybe the man said, and I, Rachim Nelach Kavasei. I love you like you love yourself. Rachim Nelach Kavasei. And therefore, it's such a simcha to you that you're becoming a Nazir when you have a son. So Shimon says, I love you as much as you love yourself, and I'm also going to become a Nazir when you have a son. Maybe that's what he meant. And imtim tzuloime, if you want to say kol ba'ampei, all these situations, yes, in front of Shimon, in front of Reuven, we go to Yigimel Amud Beis. His sifalei milsa is really embarrassed. He's really ashamed, and therefore he's saying sifalei milsa. He's really embarrassed, and he says, yes, I love you as much as you love yourself, and therefore, I'm going to take on the Naziris if you have a son. Okay, but so that's what Shimon said. Shimon said, I'm going to be a Nazir when you have a son, because he wants to show how much he cares about Reuven. But what happens if Reuven said about Levi? Reuven said, Hareini Nazir, I'm going to become a Nazir, Sh'yei Leploni Ben, when Levi, this third guy who's not in front of us, has a son. And V'shama Chaveri, and Shimon heard that, and he said, V'ani, I want to be like Reuven. What did he mean? Mahu, what did he mean? Mi Amrinam, do we say, Shloi B'fonav, since Levi is not around, right? Shloi B'fonav, Levi is not around, so he certainly is not expressing his love for Levi. So what he meant to say is that Reuven made a statement that when somebody has a son, he's going to become a Nazir. So I'm saying, Shimon is saying, Anafshei Ka'amar. He's saying, I'm going to become a Nazir when I, Shimon, have a son. That's what he meant to say. Or Dilma, or maybe he wants to show Reuven that he loves Levi as much as Reuven loves Levi. And Hachikamale, Rachinile Kevasech. I love him, I love Levi as much as you love Levi. You're becoming a Nazir when Levi has a boy. I'm becoming a Nazir when also Levi has a boy, because I care about him as much as you do. So what did the person, Shimon, mean when he said, Ba'ani, I want to do what you're doing? Tiboya, we remain with a question on this question. Again, when a person says definitively what he meant, we have to trust him. He just said Va'ani and then said, I wasn't thinking. I'll let Chachamim decide what I mean to say. And that's how all these questions develop. Hashem should bless everybody to have children so they don't have to take these commitments. Okay, one more Mishnah, and then we'll stop. Hareini Nazir. A person says, I'm going to become a Nazir. So that means he's supposed to be 30 days. But he also says, I'm going to be a Nazir ben, when I'm going to have a son. So he first said, I'm going to be a Nazir when I'm a Nazir. And then if my wife has a son, I'll also be a Nazir. So his chilmayin shalai. He started counting, let's say he counted 20 days of his own Nazirus. And then in the middle of his Nazirus, his wife had a baby boy. So he imashlim eshaloi. He finishes once he started doing the Nazirus, that his own commitment, which is not contingent upon a condition. So you finish it up. You do the next 10 days, finish up to day 30. You shave your hair, and you bring the karbanos. And then once you finish your Nazir, then you count another 30 days for the Nazirus that you took upon yourself when your wife had a boy. That was your second commitment. So you shave your head and you bring karbanos. So that's when you have two commitments. But your first commitment that you made was a commitment no strings attached. I'm a Nazir. The second commitment you made was dependent on your wife having a child. But look at this case. Hareini Nazir. A person says, I'm going to be a Nazir ben, when my wife has a son. And then v'nazir, and then I want to be a Nazir with no strings attached. So your first commitment was contingent upon your wife having a baby boy. What happened? You started counting your Nazirus. Your wife didn't have a baby yet. And then you had a baby boy after day 20. Maniach eshaloi. You stop counting in the middle of your count. You stop. Because the first commitment that you made was, I'm a Nazir when my wife has a son. And that overrides your starting of your own commitment, your own independent commitment of becoming a Nazir. So you interrupt that. Then you count your sons. So you count 30 days. You do tegalachas and karbonos. And then, you already counted 20 days of the Nazir of your original Nazirus. That was the one that you took upon yourself with no strings attached. So therefore, then you do 10 more days of your Nazirus that you didn't complete because you had to do another Nazirus, and then you complete the other 10 days. So basically, you started 20 days of Nazirus for your personal commitment, no strings attached. When your wife gave birth to a boy, you interrupted that counting. You counted a 30-day Nazirus, did the haircut, and brought karbanos, because that was a Nazirus that you took upon yourself when your wife will have a baby. Then, after you finish that, you go back and finish what you missed, the other 10 days for the Nazirus that you started, which was the Nazirus that you took upon yourself with no strings attached. I'm going to point out to you the final point. The point is, though, you shouldn't think after 10 days of Nazirus, you again take a haircut and bring karbanos. No, in order to take a haircut, you have to have 30 days of growth of hair. So therefore, technically, after 10 days, your Nazirus ends. But you really should keep your Nazirus for another 20 more days, so that you'll have a hair of 30 days, and then you'll cut it. The difference is that if you happen to become tamei during those extra days, that you're allowing yourself your hair to grow, you don't have to start the count again. But you certainly can't take a haircut right after just having 10 days of Nazirus. You have to have a real full set of hair. So Be'ez Hashem, we'll discuss more about this tomorrow on Daf Yomi. Okay.